Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are joining you live today across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, with another episode in our Negotiating for Corporate Success series. So anyone that's new here, my name is Brittany Quinn. I am the CEO and founder of PowHER, and we make it our mission here to help women just like you build unshakable confidence, dominate in that boardroom like the badass that you are, and of course, close our own gender pay gap. So we've been doing this whole series on negotiating for corporate success because we've been debunking a lot of the BS bullshit belief systems that we've all fed into for so many years and really showing you the real, the raw, the messy, but then tried and true strategies that have helped us absolutely negotiate for anything and everything we want, not just in our professional lives. And today I have such a special treat for you. So for the first time ever on the podcast, on a live stream, I am actually collaborating with someone that helped me figure this out. So you guys have heard me talk over and over and over again of how I went through coaches like underwear in my corporate career. The whole 16 years, I always had someone helping me. And it was so hard to find someone that actually had walked a mile in my shoes. And I found just a couple of those gems throughout my 16 years, and Anna was one of them. So with so much gratitude, so much just love today, I want to introduce Anna Kosick. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Anna, tell everyone a little bit about what you do.
So my name is Anna Kosick, and I am an executive coach, and I am a coach who is specialized in working with ambitious women to help them achieve career success, but to do so in a way where we don't have to sacrifice our lives. And about when it comes to lives, it's usually that we also want to be present with friends and family, that we want to be able to take care of our health and well-being, and that we just want to also have time for ourselves.
Anna, obviously I know so much about you and what you did, but whenever we first started working together, every time that you would tell me your story, of your global career, you sitting in rooms so many times that are extremely intimidating for the majority of us as women, and how you were able to claim your power and really sit in that. And the stories you've shared are just remarkable. And what I noticed throughout our time together, and then especially doing this now, right? You helping me take the leap, of like, you're ready to start this. You have so much. What I discovered is so many times we really went back to, in some way, shape, or form, of what we now term executive presence. Right. And I
Correct.
know that is very much a sweet spot of yours. And the reason that I want to talk about it today on the podcast, on the live, is because it is very much associated with negotiation, because there's no way in hell you can stand in there like the powerful woman that you are without executive presence. So I'd like to start out by kind of debunking and demystifying some of the not so fun concepts that come into our minds when we think about executive presence. How can we first do that, let alone execute?
Yeah, no, and thank you for all of that. And that is absolutely true. Just like, a super quick background when it comes to my story is that I started out my corporate career in 2008. I joined a global media and technology company based out of Scandinavia, but that has brands all over the world. And I very quickly climbed the corporate ladder. I had my first managerial position where I had people reporting to me just after 2 years. And then I spent the rest of my corporate career, the 10 years, as a people manager, being very often the only woman in the room. I was in management teams. I reported to the board. And there were just a lot of patterns that came up, right? Both in the behaviors with people around me, but also I could see different behavioral patterns that I had and that a lot of the women around me also had. And one of the things that I realized was that when it came to executive presence, and I think anyone who is watching or listening to this can relate to, that we all have this idea of what executive presence looks like when we see it in other people, right? And when I ask people about this, like, what is executive presence when we're talking about other people, I often hear, someone who is very confident, someone who is very calm. Those are the two things that come up. And that makes it also a little bit interesting why there is so much negativity around executive presence, because who doesn't want to show up in their day-to-day feeling confident and being calm, right? Isn't that the dream for us? But when it comes to, I think, myths around executive presence is, first of all, that it's something that we're born with, right? It's just something that some people have. Like this gift, also the same way we speak about leadership is like, he just has it, or she just, it's so easy for her. But what I saw in my own experience, right, was that the question is this something, is executive presence something that people just have, or is it more a consequence of certain things? And this has been kind of my journey when it comes to figuring out how to crack the code when it came to my own career, but also helping others, is figuring out these elements, right? Looking at other people, how they show up, and trying to break down, like, what is it that they're actually doing? And one of the reasons I think that executive presence for women is a triggering concept, and something that we kind of know that we need to build, and something that we might want to, but since so much of the leaders that we have around us are your traditional kind of white guy, we look at some of their behaviors and some of the ways that they act, and we feel like it's not for us, and we feel like we don't want that. So part of the trick as women, senior professional women, is figuring out what does that look like and how does that feel for me, while executive presence comes down to the perception of how other people perceive us.
Oh, and I love that. And one key point that I heard very loudly, and this is something that I remember us working on ourselves in our coaching sessions, is that whenever we see this in other people, and we assume it's easy.
Yes.
We assume those people just walk in, they never feel imposter syndrome, they never feel like they don't belong in that room, they never not have confidence. And that's just bullshit, right?
Yes.
When we really think about it. And especially when it comes to negotiation. I was reading, on the stats, a lot that was shared on the past few episodes on the podcast, that when women were asked what negotiating is like a metaphor, they were told that it was like going to the dentist. They would legit rather have a root canal than negotiate. And then when men were asked the same question, they felt it was like a wrestling match, or, a chess game, essentially.
Exactly.
And so with that being said, what do you think is the biggest aha moment that you've received with your clients when they finally realize that everyone is just as scared as they are?
Yeah. Well, I think, so first of all, I think, and I want to recommend Brittany's podcast here. It's amazing. I so wish that I had this all these years ago. And I listened through the episodes on negotiating. And I think that, so one of the things that you bring up, Brittany, right, is like, even the idea when somebody says the word negotiate, and even for me, all these years later, right, there's like something triggering about that. And I think it's important to also kind of break down what it is, why this feels so uncomfortable for so many of us. And I think also you shared that in one of the podcasts, we have this idea of like Wolf of Wall Street, that negotiating is a very like masculine act of like demanding certain things in a very aggressive way and setting boundaries in a way that is just not very natural for many of us, right? So I think it's an important aspect also to shift what negotiating can look like and feel like, because at its core, negotiating, not just, when it comes to getting paid more, whether it's when we are applying for a new job and we're at the final stages of negotiating, or going into a performance review, or asking for a promotion. What is a negotiation? It's basically somebody, first of all, figuring out and deciding what they want, and then sharing that with another person who is in control of making that happen, and then having a conversation to achieve that, or at least close to that, that is based on logic and speaks to the other person's emotions. And I don't know anyone who is better at that than senior professional women. We just don't really look at that as negotiating.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to that negotiation piece and that aha piece, is first of all looking at, okay, this thing that you think negotiating is, that doesn't feel like us. It's not my thing. I'm not good at it. It doesn't make me comfortable. But then when we break it down about like, knowing what we want, and then bringing people along in a, conversational way to make that happen, it's like, oh, okay, I can actually do that. And we do it at work all the time, right? So I think, if we also go back to not just like, how do we build executive presence, but also where executive presence is necessary. Because if you look at research, what is executive presence? It's basically our ability to have other people feel confident about three things. And that is our expertise.
Mhm.
Our expertise is basically, do you know what you're doing, Brittany? How well do you know your domain, understand your domain, understand what it takes to achieve results and be successful in your domain, right? The second one is leadership, right? Our ability to lead. And that looks like, our ability to set a vision, communicate it, bring people along, but also to be able to create results with other people, collaboration, and through other people, management, right? And a lot of women are great at this, but we are not great at communicating it, right? We're like, it should speak for ourselves. People should know this. People should figure it out. And that comes a little bit from a place of entitlement, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, we are good at this and we know it, but we're not necessarily communicating it in a way so that other people feel confident about it and trust us in our ability to do this, right? And the third area is ceiling. And this is where the personal and professional development comes in, because our ceiling is basically that people believe that we have room to grow personally and professionally. And that means our ability to adapt to new environments and circumstances, ability to ask for feedback, take feedback, act on it to show that we're able to adapt and change and grow, and that people actually trust us. That's what executive presence comes down to. But in order to do these things, right, to show that we're a leader and to show that we're an expert, we also need to know how to bring people along and to have them do what we want, not from a manipulative way, but collaboration, working together as a team, the things that we love and are good at doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, Anna, I love everything that you just said, and everything you said is a form of negotiation.
That's it. Every
And
email, every meeting, every Slack or Teams message, we are constantly negotiating about what we should do or could do,
yeah.
right? To move things along.
Yeah, and the most amazing part is, all the research, all the stats that we've talked about in the series so far, we have evidence, a mountain of evidence to show over and over and over again that women actually thrive in negotiation. And we can see that predominantly when we're negotiating for other people,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's never been about skill set. It's never been about competency, right? It is all of this conditioning that we've talked about over and over and over again that really shown us that you can't do it when you're doing it, but like you're absolutely kicking ass doing it every single day. But you make the perfect point about communicating it.
Yeah.
Communicating your wins. I know that this is something that you work with a lot of your clients. I definitely see this daily with my clients. Is a lot of us have this deep-rooted belief that if we work hard enough, people just see how hard we're working. And I think that is conditioned, obviously, as women since birth, but then we see that a lot in academics, right? You put in the effort, you get the grade, you get what you need, you get blah, blah, blah. What I think so many of us have an allergic reaction to, and where negotiation comes in, right, is that we expect that to happen in the quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
So when it comes to negotiating, communicating your wins over and over, here's how I can crush it for your company. Here's why you can't live without me. Here's why you're insane to bring in someone from the outside instead of giving me the promotion.
Yeah.
Is negotiating.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think what you said there, because this is one of the things that I see, and just like I see so clearly that just as you said, so many of us, we were very successful at school. I work with a lot of straight A students, right? Valedictorians, like just tell me what to do and I will sit still and I will do exactly what you tell me to do. And we have that MO coming into our careers of, if I just, and this is not just what worked for us, but what we were told, as long as you work hard, say yes, get it done, good things will happen. And guess what? In the beginning of our careers, that's true, right? Because when we come in, we're new grads, we don't really have a lot to bring to the table, right? Our ability to say yes, take on more, hands, feet, working long hours, usually is beneficial for us, right? But then every single career gets to an inflection point, right? Where what got us here is not going to get us there. And why that is extra hard for women like us is because we were so damn good at that early way of working. It has served us well, not just in the first 5-10 years of our career, but our whole life. And then someone comes along and tells us we're supposed to do not just a little bit differently, but the complete opposite. right? It's not about working hard anymore. It's about working smart. It's about identifying what are the things that will make the biggest impact on the business. Because even if you spend 40, 60, 80 hours a week on something, when you get to a certain point in your career, right? If that, the things you're focusing on, they can either make a certain impact on the business, right?
Mhm.
Or if you prioritize other things, it could make a 50 times bigger impact on the business. And who are the people who get promoted and paid more and are invited into other opportunities and build that executive presence are not the people who are like, but I did what you told me to do and I did it really fast and I did it really well. If you were working on the wrong thing, or if your peer was working on something that made a bigger impact, right? And that also, early years, Brittany, right? It's about saying yes. And then what is the golden rule? Saying no to almost everything, right? And that boundary setting also then triggers our conditioning of good girls. We are here for other people, right? And what if I do that and I upset people? And part of being okay, and part of the reprogramming that both you and I do with our executive coaching clients is that's going to happen, and we need to be okay with that. And it doesn't mean that we're bad people, because that's where the identity piece comes in, because we were conditioned to say good humans are kind and helpful and they don't hurt other people. And I also believe that, right? But what we do when we have that people pleasing tendencies, and maybe with like a splash of codependency, is that we are so happy to keep other people happy at the cost of our own happiness and our own health. And that's when we go into burnout land.
Oh, Anna, so many great points there. I mean, just endless things that packed a punch, and everything that you just said over and over. And I think you bring up a really good point when it comes to negotiating. And what served us really well is working hard, doing everything you're supposed to do, and the theory of hard work pays off. The beauty of it, and then the irony of it, is hard work doesn't pay off for the majority of us. And I think a big thing that is missing in negotiation, especially for us as women, is those predominantly the men, our peers that are making more than us, right? We're still making 82 to 83 cents to the dollar. And so many people come in with the negotiation and they want me to only help them negotiate severance, negotiate a base salary, negotiate promotions. And I'm like, the money is such a tiny, tiny, tiny piece. The money's actually, ironically, the easy part of it.
Yes.
What the hard part of it is that whole mindset. And I think a lot of it comes down to is in any negotiation, you have to understand what the person on the other side of the table actually gives a shit about.
Yes.
And I think that in its core is something that many of us miss.
Yeah.
Is because we want to come in, we want to change the culture, we want to do all the social impact work, we want to do all this. And that's amazing work. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But what are the top 3 KPIs the organization actually gives a damn about?
Yeah.
That's what you execute on. What advice would you give people, because this is what will dominate in executive presence as well,
Absolutely,
on how to find out what those things are, what the person on the other side of the table, no matter if you're negotiating with your 5-year-old, you're negotiating with a board, your CFO, how can they find out what those things are?
Yeah, no, and that's I'm so glad that you bring that up, because that's really what it comes down to. Because if we think about, having, if at its core, right, I want to get what I want. And I think, there's also, as you were speaking, I just feel like I need to mention that I think that even if we look at what needs to come first in any negotiation, we need to actually decide and define what we want. And even that can be triggering, Brittany, right? What do I want, right? And to allow ourselves to actually want that, whether it's about money, right? But also setting boundaries. We think that setting boundaries is like, no, setting boundaries is a negotiation. Okay, I hear you that you want my help. How about tomorrow at this time? Or I can help you, but I only have 15 minutes. Or can you go check with Karen before you talk to me? That's a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
But in order also to be able to set boundaries, as you say, what I see, and I did this too for many years, right, is that we come into a job and we're like, okay, this is what we should be doing. This is the most important. This is what's going to make the biggest impact. But we need to anchor that into what are we trying to do in the business, right? And sometimes there's a strategy. A lot of times there isn't, right? But basically, from the CEO down to C-suite and whatever level we're relating to also be able to anchor in, okay, if I'm going to make any type of ask, whether it's about getting resources, hiring someone, or setting a boundary, I need to first understand what is it that this person cares about? Because if you speak to the CHRO or the CFO, they are probably anchored in on caring about different things, which probably are anchored in, what the CEO and the board and shareholders care about, but they have different lenses, right? So usually when it comes to your question there, how can we figure that out? First of all, there's just some natural hypotheses, right? So CFO probably cares about revenue growth, profitability, keeping costs down. Like that's a no-brainer. So if you start speaking to, this is going to benefit the team and this is going to bring in diversity and inclusion, our CFO is just like, how much is that going to cost me, right? So I think that there's just looking at the domains and the areas that people are responsible for, because we can always look at like, what is this person's job, right? What is it that this person has been hired to do? Because I have client calls, all week long where we get mad about someone setting a boundary or probing for something or asking certain questions that is annoying for us because they don't help us do what we want to do, and they can't see how this is going to benefit the thing that we care about, but they're just looking out for their thing, right? So the most successful negotiations actually start with anchoring in, what do we want, right? So if you and I, Brittany, were sitting here negotiating something, right? It needs to start with, because this is where a lot of us go wrong, and this is also where negotiation or asking for something that we want feels icky, right? Is to actually say, what do we have in common here, right? So in a salary negotiation, what that looks like if you're about to start a new job is like, we obviously both want me to be happy and motivated and feel valued here, right? That is a common goal. And then the negotiation process is about, what does that number or total comp package look like where I am happy and the other person also feels like it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to setting a boundary, right? Or negotiating deadlines, how many times have you received a project or an ask where like, when do you need this by? Yesterday. That's not helpful, right? Yeah. And then sometimes we need to start with, when would it be best for me, right? And we can say, okay, I hear you. Yesterday would have been great, but I actually have a few things on my table. So, and also back to executive presence, by us communicating, I hear that you want this, but I have this thing that I need to deliver. My team is waiting for this. So how about Friday by 10? That is a negotiation that also builds executive presence, because we are showing that we have other priorities and we're actually evaluating where this person's ask comes in versus all the other things we care about.
Oh, and I love that. And it just, streamlines perfectly into almost everything that we said. And what is coming up for me is the whole reaction we have to saying no. And the beautiful part is that's what gains you executive presence. That's what helped you negotiate like the badass that you are. And that's what's absolutely respected, because I remember so many times in my career, I completely overpromised constantly. Yeah. And there were many times, because I set myself up to fail, that I really underdelivered, which no one respects. No. Right? The last thing we want is someone to say, hey, I'm going to do this by 10. And it's the next day at 10 and you're like, well, what the fuck? Like, come on, people, let's get your stuff together. Yeah. And so, because this is something like, you and I do this for a living, right? And just us talking about today, we're already saying how we still struggle with this. And it brings us back to a point that we were talking about off stage right before we came in, that I would love for us to wrap up with today. And it's this whole idea of, when it comes to women and getting mentorship, formal mentorship, paid mentorship, what we offer today, a lot of us want to, and I remember when I first started investing in coaching, investing in myself, not, what the organization chose for me, is I wanted this beautiful 6-month program, get amazing results, which you and I both do for our clients each and every day. But then I wanted it to be like a magic pill and like, I'm cured. Like, yes. I don't need anything else. And what I discovered, and for myself, is I constantly kept reinvesting, because I had spent 20, 30, 40 years in this behavior, right? And then, because everything is a new negotiation, there's always a new challenge. What advice would you give people today that do kind of have that mindset? And we have that mindset because, well, if I was just good enough, I wouldn't need this. And it being like almost a negative thing to invest in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I see this all the time. And this is also something that I struggled with when it came to not just like investing in myself, because if we look at, the action of considering working with someone, hiring an executive coach, right? There's a lot of things that get triggered in that process. There is number one, asking for help. I don't know if we have any hyper independence in the audience, but that was definitely me, where I have been not just like raised and taught that like doing things on our own is more worthy, it's more impressive, it's more valuable, but also I was rewarded. I mean, I have so many memories where I was, people spoke of me and Anna did this on her own. She didn't ask for any help. She figured it out. And I was like noted, gold stars for doing everything by myself, right? And then it got to a point where that becomes really heavy and it becomes a lot of work. And there's this aspect of like reinventing the wheel over and over again, where I started thinking, is that necessary? Is that the best use of my time and energy? Because I am obsessed about optimizing how I use my time, effort and energy. And if I can tap into someone else's experience and expertise, not just for them to show me and tell me how to do things and why, but to actually be there as I go through it. Like I have a hard time seeing how that is weakness or how that would be less valuable than me doing it on my own, right? But it was part of an identity that I had, like I don't need anyone, which is not that's not what Beyonce and Destiny's Child were singing about, right? Like there's a level of independence, and then we go into hyper independence, which is just hard and lonely. So I think that's like one. So if this is resonating with someone, to be like, that's me, right? That's something to look at, because if that resistance shows up when it comes to hiring a coach, that behavior is probably showing up in 572 other areas of our life that is making it unnecessarily hard. And a lot of the women that I work with and a lot of the women in my community struggle with work-life balance or on that brink of burnout. And this is a massive reason why, right? And then it's the money piece, right? Investing on ourselves, spending money on ourselves, right? And there's just like, and we could spend 3 hours talking about money mindset and money stories and also that. But what I like to say is like to take this opportunity and look at, what is the resistance around spending this money? Because it is an investment. The point here is that this is going to be an ROI, not just in our career growth and how much money we make, but also our well-being. So many people out there just feel like shit all the time, right? And how can we put a number on that? So that's the second piece. And then I think the third piece, right, is the trust.
Yeah.
Right? So many of us have trusted other people. It makes me emotional talking about this. We have trusted people in our lives, right? We have maybe, a hyper independent who allowed herself to ask for help, bring in help, and it didn't work, or they let us down. I have a lot of people who came to me like, I did work with a coach and it didn't work, or this happened, or they delivered. And then there's also that aspect of looking at, okay, so if we then have come to a point where like, I'm just not trusting other people anymore, is that how we want to live? Right? So there's also like the only way that we can change our beliefs and our behaviors is trying something new. And then we can do our research to do so. But I think that those are the three things that I myself have experienced, but that I also see is the resistance that comes up around the idea of bringing someone in who can help us, right? Who can help us get where we want to go faster, easier, with less stress, having more fun. We get to sleep better. We get to laugh more. We get to feel more hopeful. And that's what it's all about.
Oh, Anna, I know. I mean, and you're so right. We could talk about this for hours, right? My old analogy I always use is, I hire someone for the dentist because I'm not working on my own teeth. I hire someone to cut my hair because I'm not going to cut my own hair. And so I'm sure as hell going to hire someone that helps me fund all of those people, right? Exactly. To this day, continue to work with multiple coaches and always will. Made such a tremendous value in my life. Thank you again for everything that you've done for me in my corporate life as well prior. Oh my gosh. Anna, while we're wrapping up here, what I want to do today is I want you to let everyone know, where can they go to learn more about you and the incredible work that you're doing?
Awesome. Yes. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Anna Kosick. Easy to find me. I'm also on Instagram, which is also at Anna Kosick. And my website is tilescollab.com.
All right, everyone. If you are following us here, you just heard it. Go right now. Go to LinkedIn. Go to Insta. I know you're on both, lady. We all addicted to our little screens. Follow her today. Learn more about what she's doing. Visit her website. For those of you, obviously, follow me here. Again, Brittany Quinn, CEO and founder of PowHER. And until next time, ladies, let's go do the damn thing.